potential answers were economic development, job creation, public K through 12, public safety, transportation, higher ed, our community colleges. Overwhelmingly, the people answered that the thing that they wanted the state government to be working on first in terms of core services was economic development, job creation. And that, I thought, was not a surprise, but it was 53% of the people on the call and answering at that time. Really, public K through 12, public safety, and transportation all kind of lumped in about the same in there. We also asked whether Virginia, as we're facing this revenue shortfall and budget gap, whether we should take certain tracks to try to address that. And the different proposals were cut wasteful spending, institute long-term structural reforms, use bonds where appropriate, raise taxes, take money out of the state rainy day fund. And you wouldn't be surprised that 73% of the people said cut wasteful spending and eliminate earmarks. So that's where people are in our district. The second was institute long-term structural reforms in the budget. You may have seen in the newspaper, the front page this morning, Virginia's grade in terms of charter schools. And I asked a question about charter schools, and 68% of the people on the call said that they would support additional ways to improve Virginia's laws regarding charter schools. And I know that's something that the governor-elect is planning to make a part of his legislative package. We talked about health care, and I asked a question about health care, and the question which you have before you, do you support efforts in the federal government to provide government-paid health care to every uninsured Virginian? And 80% of the people in our district, at least in the sample, opposed the federal government providing health care to every uninsured Virginian. And then lastly, in terms of health care, and the fifth question that we surveyed on, would you support limited health care benefits mandated by the state? And 64% said yes. So there seemed to be a compromise, if you will, or at least the acknowledgement that healthcare is important. It's just a matter of how you go about it. And there was consensus that how the federal government seems to be going about it, at least from the perspective of the people in our district, that was not the right way. We, month to month, get revenue data from the Secretary of the Finance, and he most recently reported on October. We will get the governor's revised revenue estimates on December 18th, presented to the House Finance, House Appropriations, and Senate Finance Committees. He will also be proposing, the current governor will be proposing his version of the 2-year spending plan. Ultimately, that proposal, that bill, will be taken by the legislature and remixed and made to look like the House wants it to look like, or how the Senate wants it to look like. But this will be really the first volley in what would be a multi-volley activity over the next 3 months, maybe longer. But I think it's important for you to know where we are, kind of the state of the Commonwealth, if you will, in terms of revenue. And if you were on the call last night, I apologize if this is somewhat redundant. But general fund revenue collections reflect weak economic environment. That's not surprising. Total revenues fell 8% in October compared with year-to-date October of 08. All major sources except corporate income tax declined from last October. So we're just 30 days out in terms of the most recent numbers. So you know, if you don't already, the general fund funds the things that most people care about, put it that way. And a large portion of it, not over 50%, goes to aid to localities. Hanover County, King William County, New Kent, King Queen receive the lion's share of general fund dollars. And a majority of that helps schools, and public safety, and the rest, the services that you get from the local government. That general fund is derived from several sources, but the largest of which are sales tax collections, income tax, both corporate and individual, withholding, non-withholding, and recordation tax, or deeds, wills, and that type of activity. Well, if you look at that portfolio, it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise that we're not where we thought we would be a year ago. people are losing jobs, they're not getting raises. If they've lost their job or they don't have that extra money, they're not spending it. They're not buying houses, certainly. And that was really ground zero, I think, of this current economic crisis is housing. So every single major source of revenue that the state relies on for general fund dollars is depressed. And there's no means to improve that other than either giving a tax break or raising taxes. And that's kind of your options on the revenue. And I think most of us would agree that raising taxes is not the right step to take, especially in an economic recession. So we're going to have to address these revenue shortfalls and do a budget without raising taxes, which makes it even that much more difficult. And we're talking about $3.5 billion gap, at least at the moment. So hopefully, I think a former $3.5 billion. Yeah, billion.
Is that in 1 year or
for the biennium? The sobering part of that is that if we were to equalize the cuts across all state agencies that, say, higher education has had over the last year, which is 15%, that will generate $250 million. So if you're trying to make up a gap of $3.5 billion, $250 million doesn't get you that far. I mean, it's good, but there's going to be a lot more that has to happen in terms of structural reform and spending cuts. Now, some people, you shouldn't say you're going to cut. It's just less spending, or you're right-sizing government, or you're reprioritizing those core services. So you can say all that, but in the end, it's less money. And yet, while it's gloomy, I think it's a real opportunity if we take it seriously. If we actually use it as the opportunity it is, and make significant changes to state government. In the past, and in 2004 is the best example, the governor raised taxes, the single largest tax increase in Virginia history. That was supposed to have saved the budget, supposed to have saved Virginia's economy. Well, all it did was inflate the budget, and here we are 5 years later, and we still have a $3.5 billion gap. So what did those tax increases accomplish?
More spending.
More spending, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And artificially inflating expectations. So that now when we go back and we have to reduce those, we're the bad guys.
Yeah.
So that is kind of where we are in terms of the revenues year to date. National economic indicators suggest economic activity is beginning to pick up. But every single one of those items I mentioned that fund the general fund are lagging. We're not going to see those pick up for some time. The economists will say the recession's over, but that doesn't really benefit us in terms of revenues, or really you and your jobs, for much longer. And so it's optimistic in terms of where we're headed, but we're going to have to be somewhat patient with that.